It is approximately, in fact, it is exactly 2:34 p.m. Some of us have badges that'll get you in the door and some don't, and I was one of the don'ts. But the good news is somebody promptly came by and helped me, though it took a minute. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
Commissioner Stone?
Present, here.
Commissioner Green?
Here.
Commissioner Hughes?
Here.
Chair Bustamante?
Present.
And Madam Chair, the door should be open, so is there an issue maybe with the doors being unlocked for this public meeting?
It was in the back. Are
Okay.
the back doors supposed to be open as well? Because that one is where I was locked out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Chair Bustamante, Commissioner Green, the front door is open for public access.
Thank you for confirming.
Okay, thank you. All right. Do we have an approval of the agenda or anything that needs to be changed? Manager Schaefer?
Chair Bustamante, Commissioners, there are no recommended changes from staff to the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I will
as
make a
pre-
motion to approve as presented.
Second?
I will second.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Green, a second by Commissioner Johnson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We have, the agenda has been approved. Presentation and discussion of FY 2026 budget development. Manager Schaefer, you're on.
Thank you, Chair Bustamante and Commissioners. It's my pleasure to present to you today a high-level overview of the proposed operating budget being put forward by Santa Fe County management. We're going to begin by starting at the macro level, spend some time discussing the revenue projections upon which the budget is based, and then finally talk for a more extended bit relative to the actual departmental level budget request of the county manager's office and its constituent components. So I want to acknowledge at the outset the hard work of everybody at the county that went in to the preparation of the budget book, as well as the underlying budget that it represents. We have several study sessions scheduled with the Board of County Commissioners, including today and 2 others, and can schedule more at your pleasure between now and the last BCC meeting in May, at which we will need to have a final budget approval. So I'm going to start, as indicated, with a high-level overview relative to the budget recommended by county management. So again, we're here talking about our operational budget, which includes operational expenditures, some fixed asset request, as well as capital expenditures that were included in the budget or previous year budgets, but not captured as a specific project that was discussed as part of the capital process. We've also included debt service payments in the material that are presented to the board. All told, the operating budget recommended is approximately $305 million, excluding transfers. and that includes both recurring expenditures of approximately $253 million and non-recurring expenditures of approximately $51 million. That $51 million includes budget contingencies, which we will talk about a little bit later as we talk about the built-in resiliency of our proposed operating budget. I'm going to pause just for a second for orientation to talk about transfers and why they're excluded from this figure as represented. So you have money that comes in to a fund, say the general fund, and you have a transfer of resources from that fund to another fund, say the Law Enforcement Protection Fund. If we show both transfers, we end up overstating the actual economic activity of the county because those amounts would be counted twice, both in the general fund as a resource coming in, and then again in the Law Enforcement Protection Fund as an additional resource coming in. So to summarize that point, there's only that one resource that exists one time. The transfer gets it to its ultimate home, if you will, in terms of where it's ultimately expended from. That's why we exclude the transfers. Though when you see other summary information, when the transfers are included, it significantly increases the dollar figures being presented because those transfers amount to tens of millions of dollars. In terms of where our priorities continue to be is to ensure that we maintain our competitiveness relative to the labor market in which we compete. The Board of County Commissioners and County Management has made that a priority over the last several budget cycles. That has significantly contributed to our steadily declining vacancy rate and the proposed budget put forward by management continues that investment. Relative to the class and comp refresh or benchmarking study for ASME 1782 bargaining unit positions and non-bargaining unit positions, that totals approximately $2.461 million that have been set aside for that purpose. Other amounts have been allocated relative to negotiations with our RECC bargaining unit and our 1413 medical unit at the adult detention jail. We'll talk about those specifically when we address the budgets of those departments. There is one more scheduled increase to the county's PERA contribution rates for our defined benefit package for our employees. That's 0.5%, and that goes into effect in July. We've budgeted approximately $375,000 for that increase. We've also budgeted at least the portion of the increase to group health benefit contributions that is scheduled to go into effect in January, which is approximately $426,000 or so. Those amounts are generally included in the Finance Division budget. We did believe that we had opportunity and capacity to address certain targeted, limited expansions of the workforce, which will be discussed as part of each departmental budget summary. As it relates to the county manager's office, the two that we'll spend some time talking about today are an administrative assistant to further our customer service initiative at the kiosk at 240 Grant Avenue, which is our primary frontward-facing office in the county. And then separately, we want to help bolster our IPRA team, Inspection of Public Records Act team, within the county attorney's office and believe that a clerk will assist in providing redundancy and support to our growing volume of IPRA-related requests. And Mr. Boyd will be able to speak to that as we move forward. We're also planning within this budget to start laying the groundwork for future growth as we try to project out our staffing needs relative to growth in the county. There is already underway in the Sheriff's Department a staffing study that will complement one that has been completed relative to the Emergency Communications Center. And all of that data and information will help us to start to plan the roadmap for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years out as we anticipate the growth that we'll need in the public safety arena and otherwise to meet the growing needs of the county in those areas. This budget does include the second part of what we estimate to be needed in order to complete the acquisition and implementation of the county's enterprise resource planning and jail management systems. The board has budgeted in this fiscal year significant resources for the consultant that has been retained to assist us in mapping out our needs as well as preparing the RFP and implementing that. These are the remainder of what we estimate to be the cost necessary to bring that transformative technology to fruition. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking at the outset relative to how we've tried to build in this budget and otherwise a budget that is resilient and can take some shocks from external factors. And the way that I would think about this information is that it starts with your revenue estimates and how aggressive you are in terms of estimating recurring revenue. As we'll discuss later, the county has for the last 2 budget cycles, and we recommend in this budget cycle that we use the mean estimate. It is the official estimate from our economist, but it's, I don't want to say exactly in the middle because that would not accurately represent it, but it isn't the highest estimate of range of possible outcomes, nor is it the lowest. So we're building the budget based upon what we reasonably believe to be the most likely outcome, but then we also plan for downside events, namely if the revenue were to come in less than what we estimated, we try to include within our budget an actual contingency for that effect. So that's one-time cash that could be used in the event that revenue came in less than we estimated. There are other budget contingencies that we'll go through in greater detail that we have included for several budget cycles. Those also include a fund that was set aside specifically to help ensure that we had resources to aggressively pursue significant grant opportunities. I believe that the amount that remains of that is approximately $8.8 million, though if we were successful in obtaining the wildfire mitigation grant, that could consume up to $2.5 million of that as a matching requirement. That was also an identified source of potential resources when we were trying to pursue the BEAD funding. We're working with our private ISP partners. That didn't come to fruition, but nonetheless, that was the opportunity fund, if you will, that was available to help support those initiatives. It's partially relevant here. It could continue to be used for that purpose. It is general fund money, so if the board desired, depending upon the changing landscape as we go forward in the next fiscal year, that could be reallocated to meet some other need that we're not anticipating relative to steep federal decline in terms of social support, what have you. But again, the first line of defense is to build a budget based upon realistic budget estimates. The second line of defense is to then look at your budget contingencies to help address those things that we can reasonably foresee. And then the final line of defense represents those amounts that are committed portions of fund balance and that could be available to meet to meet the various needs of the funds that they are there to support. None of that is to suggest that if you were facing a potential decline of 10% of revenue, and it's predicted to last over multiple years, that you're just going to keep spending without making any adjustments to your overall expenditure profile. Of course, that's not what we would do. Fund balances in particular took years to accumulate. The point is that it gives you the flexibility to study the range of potential policy options as to how you react to that, as well as cash on hand to help fund some of those decisions, so that we're not pulling back completely in terms of services and offerings to the public when we're in the midst of a recession, when folks are otherwise suffering and require support from government. It provides you with that opportunity and that flexibility to consider a range of potential policy reactions. Finally, we're not recommending that every uncommitted and unassigned portion of fund balance be expended at this time. We are working on a summary of where all of that resides in a more one-page-like format that you could look at our estimates as to where available fund balance might end up. But the point is, that's never been the MO of the county. We've preserved fund balance so that we can make significant moves and significant investments. For example, Connect was stood up using fund balance. We were able to move forward with the digital trunked radio system out of available resources and self-pay that because we had those fund balances. So we've not ever tried to spend every potential dollar that was available because it was available, and this budget is no different. So I wanted to close relative to the executive summary, just to note that part of the information that will be presented are our estimates relative to where we'll end up fiscal year 25 in terms of excess resources. We don't know what that final number will be. We're reasonably comfortable that the number that's included for primarily non-recurring expenditures in this budget will be met with that. But in September and October timeframe, when we close the books on fiscal year 2025, there may be additional one-time resources that we can discuss with the board at that time relative to allocating. And then where I started to end this bit of the presentation, our revenue, could come in higher than the mean estimate upon which the budget is based. As we'll talk about in a few minutes, there's a great deal of uncertainty in terms of where the economy is going to end up. I don't know that we know, exactly what the final fiscal and trade policies of this administration will be, and nor does anybody know with any great degree of certainty what those impacts may or may not be relative to our overall economic situation. So I'm going to move forward relative to The revenue estimates for our primary tax revenues, which we look at as gross receipts tax, property tax, as well as our lodgers tax. We do contract with an independent economist, third party, to provide us with revenue estimates. The full report that we received from Dr. White from UNM is included as an appendix in the budget book. By way of summary, we receive mean estimates, which is the average of the three models that Dr. White utilizes, and it constitutes the official revenue estimate. We have a low estimate that would generally project lower revenue and represent a worst case scenario, as well as a high estimate that represents a quote unquote best case scenario. I put those in quotes because, as indicated, there are a lot of unknowns. This represents, as I understand it, a worst case, a reasonably, if you will, a reasonable worst case scenario. There actually could and have been in the history of our economy, more significant revenue downturns than what were predicted at the time. The Great Recession of 2008 and 2009 obviously comes to mind when we experienced significant decreases in overall revenue. The note of caution that was provided by Dr. White is reflected in the board book and in his full report. As indicated, Dr. White concludes that whether the current environment will turn into a full-blown recession remains to be seen, but conditions are ripe for volatility. In the meantime, states like New Mexico must focus on resilience, prudent fiscal management, investment in workforce development, and strategic engagement in national policy discussions will be critical. So relative to the estimates, each are provided in the book and in the appendix. You'll see that the estimated growth relative to gross receipts tax on the mean level is relatively modest from fiscal year 25 to fiscal year 26, and relative to the low end risk, you'll see a potential difference of approximately $1.5 million, more or less. As we look at property tax revenue estimates, yes, please. My preference, Chair Bustamante, is that we wait until the end. I may end up answering some of the questions if that's acceptable to the board. Relative to property tax revenue, the estimates are provided on page 9, of the budget book. You'll see that the estimated property tax revenue for fiscal year 26 is approximately $65.7 million. Low estimate is at approximately $62.774 million. And relative to lodgers tax revenue estimates, the mean estimate is at 2.7, and the lower estimate is at 2.311. I would note here, when we talk about lodgers tax revenue, the proposed operating budget proposes to split that revenue 50-50 between the Lodgers Tax Facilities Fund and the Lodgers Tax Advertising Fund, as allowed under state law and the county ordinance. That allocates resources both to continued advertising, but allows the Facilities Fund to support open space and trails and other assets that are directly related to our lodging and outdoor recreation economy, as well as other potential assets. We propose in the budget to move the funding for the existing open space interpretive ranger from the general fund to the Lodgers Tax Facilities Fund. That's a means of trying to diversify the revenue that we're utilizing, but that would also free up general fund resources for a new code enforcement officer within the Growth Management Department. A focus of that position will be on short-term rental enforcement and will also hopefully allow for augmented staffing in areas of need, as will be discussed with the Growth Management Department. In particular, if you have looked at any of the clean and lean hearing officer ordinances, we have more of those hearing officer agendas, I misspoke. We have more of those cases coming forward in the future. It's an area of focus for the Growth Management Department, and those cases are intensive to prepare and to bring forward, and so that's part of the rationale as well for the code enforcement officer. So with regard to other revenue, I've not endeavored to summarize that here. We do receive revenue ranging from payments for services provided, such as water and wastewater service, to emergency ambulance transport, to grant revenue and payments from other governmental entities. Those revenues are summarized in the fund summary overview sections of the budget book. And as we think about how we score different resources, we look at an estimated vacancy rate or vacancy savings, not so much a rate, it's more vacancy savings. We don't anticipate that we'll ever achieve 100% full employment in terms of all FTEs being filled throughout the course of a fiscal year. We assume that overall our vacancy savings will be about 10% year over year. So what that means is we estimate that of whatever millions of dollars are budgeted in fiscal year 25 for salary and benefits, that 10% of that will be available at year end to fund the next year's budget. And so we don't force a vacancy rate at the departmental level. We look at that at the overall aggregate level, but we do look at that 10% as being a recurring resource that would be available for the next fiscal year's budget, and we've scored that accordingly. It's important to note that, as explained in some of the background material included in the budget book, and as the board is familiar with in terms of past budget cycles and/or items that have come before the board this calendar year, that we do in fact have rollovers of funds primarily for capital projects as well as fixed assets. If we know that's going to happen, that can be done as part of the budget process. There's a separate rollover process that takes place from purchase orders and the like. And again, that's concluded later in the process. So when all is said and done, what ultimately is approved as the final operating budget could be in excess of what is presented here today. To take a simple example to explain, how that might work is if money was budgeted in fiscal year 25 for a particular fixed asset, and due to supply strain constraints, what have you, that asset wasn't purchased. That money may ultimately be rolled forward into the fiscal year 26 budget, which will cause numbers to increase. As we go over fund level summaries, do note that we have estimates relative to where fiscal year 25 is going to end up. We're not recommending that the high end of that estimate be entertained at this time, and instead, as I previously explained, we recommend that some of that potential resource we wait to talk about until September, when we actually close the books on fiscal year 2025 and know where revenue and expenditures ultimately ended up. So I've already briefly touched upon this, but it's important enough to perhaps reiterate that we do again build the budget using the mean estimates in our primary revenues, property tax, gross receipts tax, and lodgers tax revenue streams. And we also try to address within the budget, again, uncertainty through the use of budget contingencies, as well as in recent years included funds to allow us to aggressively pursue significant grant opportunities when presented. These have been budgeted at individual category levels where we think they might be needed, but ultimately or set aside as a contingency in the finance division budget. But all told, the proposed contingencies for fiscal year 26 total just shy of about $19.2 million. And again, they're itemized here as to what those amounts are. I've talked a bit, and we'll just reiterate in terms of the county's actual reserve policy and the commitments that the board makes on an annual basis. The amounts that are shown here are from fiscal year 2024. And again, this is the amount that the board committed by resolution to be available for the indicated purposes within the general fund, and then also the amounts that are committed to be available for truly extraordinary events associated with these various special revenue funds. That's again just to help paint the picture relative to how the county plans for uncertainty and for true rainy days. I will close by talking just a bit about some forward-looking potential revenue developments and opportunities. First, as the board or some board members are aware from our last budget cycle, we have two outstanding revenue bonds that were issued in 1997 in order to construct the adult detention facility and the sheriff's facility at the public safety complex. There's been revenue that has been pledged to repay that debt. Those bonds are set to mature on September 1 of 2027. We've itemized, what that will mean in terms of resources that currently go to debt service. For the correctional system 1997 revenue bonds, that's approximately $2.2 million in annual debt service. And for the final 2 years of the sheriff's facility 1997A revenue bonds, it's about $422,000. With regard to the correctional, county correctional facility, GRT, The working plan is that could be rebonded, so we could issue new revenue bonds in order to fund a substantial renovation and expansion of the adult detention facility to better reflect its current demands and uses relative to medical and behavioral health services as well as reentry services. That's not before the board today, rather we're looking forward in terms of potential opportunities down the road. Alternatively, depending upon the needs of the county and the overall financial situation of the county, that money could instead be used to reduce the amount of general fund that goes to fund the adult detention facility and could free up general fund resources for some other purpose. Again, not a decision point today so much as to identify our efforts to constantly be planning forward in terms of what the next few years might look like, and to at least start to put together potential frameworks and plans to help guide some of those future discussions. Relative to the sheriff's facility 1997A revenue bonds, again, when that money frees up, I actually do recommend at that time that we utilize those general fund resources to help expand the county sheriff's office by adding additional deputies, assuming as I do that their staffing study will support those efforts. We'll talk about that in greater length with the sheriff's office, but this supports action that the board took last year to create some public safety aid positions as entry-level positions for those who are interested in a career in law enforcement and want to try it out, but also those who are too young to become sworn law enforcement officers. You have to be 21, and so these positions could potentially be coming online as those individuals are, prepared, if you will, to graduate to sworn officers. But again, that's an effort to project forward in terms of where we may be relative to a few years' time from now. We will hope to conclude this fiscal year, 2026, the upcoming fiscal year, a cost of service study relative to water and wastewater services. Depending upon the outcome of that study and what action the board takes with regard to it, that could increase revenue that is available to the utility division to include covering more of its capital cost. Again, forward-looking in terms of potential opportunities. The board received, this is related to solid waste funding. The board received a cost of service study in April of 2024. It provided a variety of different options for the board to consider going forward, and also reflected that our actual revenue associated with solid waste covers approximately 12.3% of the fiscal year 24 budget. That's what was presented in that report. That will continue to decline absent any change to the rate structure. Again, it's not to say that rates will or will not change. Rather, I'm just noting that is something that we'll be working with the board on in fiscal year 26 to consider. No rate changes at all are reflected in this operating budget. Again, it's to establish potential opportunities for consideration. We'll be working in fiscal year 2026 comprehensively as a team to explore the possibility of the county becoming a Medicaid provider for some additional services. We're already reimbursed by Medicaid and Medicare for some services, primarily I believe in the area of ambulance transport, but there's a potential opportunity relative to other Medicaid eligible services that the county provides, including those provided to inmates on site by county staff. So that will be an effort in fiscal year 26 to explore that possibility further. And then the final point that I wanted to mention in this section of the presentation is that we are anticipating, absent a change in state law, that the administrative fee that is charged on gross receipts tax distributions to local governments will be phased out by fiscal year 29, that is beginning July 1, 2028. And so, long story short, all gross receipts tax are collected by the Taxation and Revenue Department, and then local option gross receipts tax are distributed out to local government recipients. Under law, the current law, TRD withholds 3% on the amount that is remitted. So if the county were to receive or be due $100 in gross receipts tax, we would only receive $97. The TRD would keep 3. Now, on our financial statements, we would recognize the full gross amount of $100, but we recognize the corresponding expense of $3. So the net amount that's available for expenditure is 97, but we do recognize both the gross revenue as well as that administrative expense. You will see that administrative fee throughout the various components of our gross receipts tax revenue. I believe Yvonne estimated it for those that are included in the operating budget. It's about $2.3 million. The phase out begins not this year, but in fiscal year 27. The administrative fee will be reduced to 2%. Then it'll be reduced further to 1% in fiscal year 2028, and then it will be eliminated altogether beginning July 1 of 2028, which is fiscal year 2029. So those are the high-level overviews that I wanted to present to the board before we move forward to looking at, and if the board would like me to continue, I can spend a few minutes talking about overall, fund level summary sheet, and then also talking about potential, federal funds and grants that are at risk, or we can discuss those at the individual department level meetings, whichever the board would prefer.
Thank you. Is that a conclusion?
It is, Chair Bustamante, again, unless you would like me to spend some time discussing the federal funds that we've identified as being potentially at risk, or we can do that at the individual department hearings and presentations as well.
If you're comfortable with it, I would like to open it for questions if the board has any. Commissioner Green.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. So there was the low, and there was the high, and there was the mean, and then you did make reference to recessionary impacts, and I'm wondering if that scope of what maybe the past 2 or 3 recessions meant in, not in dollar terms, but maybe in percentage terms to gross receipts. So low and high might be based on sort of like a general cycle of stuff, but is it a 12%? Is it a 20%? Is it or is it within the low and high ranges?
So thank you for the question, Chair Bustamante and Commissioner Green. So the predicted low estimate would be less than the worst that we've absorbed in terms of the last very significant recession. So part of what we are working on, and we will be talking to the board with in June timeframe, is re-looking at our reserve policy. And so we're actually doing a risk-based reserve analysis. And so for comparison, during the Great Recession, we experienced a gross receipts tax decline of 11.5%. And so what is being estimated here, as again, it's not a crystal ball, obviously. It's someone's best educated guess of where they think things will be on the low end if certain assumptions come to pass. That would not cover the contingency in the budget, would not cover a reduction in revenue of that extent. But again, that's why we have the amounts that we do committed in our actual reserves to withstand a much more significant and unanticipated drop in revenue. I hope that answers your question.
It does. It's just to know the order of magnitude that we're dealing with for that type of thing. So to know that it is actually outside the bounds of low and the low estimate. And, when you see some Wall Street people saying there's a 60% chance of a recession, maybe we should be preparing for that, more, consciously than things just moving straight in a straight line. Another question I have is, I know we have a lot of stuff in here for behavioral health. And seeing that the state has created this behavioral health fund, I'm wondering if we're looking at those aspects as being potentially funded through grants from the state as opposed to from our general fund, and maybe isolating that to see that, we could, expand that area or fund it through state things, and to be prepared with grant writing and everything as soon as those programs are stood up in July. And that may be for a later section of this, but I was just thinking in this sort of general revenues of grants.
Thank you, Chair Bustamante, Commissioner Green. I think Ann Ryan and our CSD team can better address that in terms of specific opportunities. We obviously will pursue all available opportunities to help fund the priorities as established by the board. I think the budget reflects those things that we think are significant enough that we should be planning to do on our own, but obviously that might be an opportunity once those final plans are put in place and we have a better sense of how those monies might be allocated. But I'm making a note of that, and I know that Ms. Ryan will be, Director Ryan will be available to address that.
Great. And then last question, in terms of fixed assets and things that we might be buying, whether it's vehicles for the sheriff or other things that might be near end of life, but if we have a significant downturn, do we have internal triggers? Like, for instance, we see revenues, or even if our revenues don't go down because Santa Fe market is sometimes behind national trends, but also recovers behind national trends, that maybe we have, if national statistics show that the country goes into a recession, that we start to trigger some cost savings, and one area that I would see is not necessarily on the staffing side, but to actually look at fixed asset deferment, replacement deferment programs, whether it's vehicles or, can we get another year out of a computer, or things that, we'd like to have a new one, but, they're doing just fine for another year.
Chair Bustamante, Commissioner Green, we would be, trying to, time some of those purchases so that we do get some, greater clarity relative to that picture. I don't disagree with you at all that, that is an area that you would be looking to try and pivot in the event of a significant revenue downturn. And that's why we score those as being non-recurring, because again, as you said, we can get another year out of, ultimately we have to replace it, but we could probably squeeze another year out of this or out of that. So we will try to manage the expenditures in that regard. I will note and give some upfront credit to the Sheriff's Office and our data team that worked very much in strong collaboration to really scrutinize our vehicle replacement schedule in the Sheriff's Office. And I don't have those numbers right in front of me, but it's significantly less than in previous years because they too are thinking along similar lines. So in other words, they've already adjusted what's being requested in terms of vehicle replacement in light of data, and we'll talk about that in greater detail when we talk about the Sheriff's Office budget.
Great, thank you for covering this.
Thank you. Commissioner Hughes?
Thank you. Yeah, just a question. I see that you're funding a ranger out of the lodger's tax fund and then funding a new code enforcement official, which I agree with. We need a new code enforcement person. But I also have heard since going back many years, including Commissioner Miller's time, Manager Miller's time, what's the possibility of funding a second ranger out of the lodger's tax fund? Is it possible to fund not one but two, or sometime in the future?
Chair Bustamante, Commissioner Hughes, I think that would be possible in the future. What the Growth Management Department will be working on during the course of the next fiscal year is really fleshing out in greater detail for the board's consideration what their vision ultimately is for that program, so that as we consider adding additional FTE, which again adds to our recurring budget, that we know what that piece looks like in terms of an overall sort of comprehensive plan of here's where we want to get, and we can start planning on how we get there. And so in that regard, it's not dissimilar to the work that we're doing, have done with the Regional Emergency Communications Center, and also the work that is underway with the Sheriff's Office, and then finally staffing analysis that will be done by the fire department. So again, trying to lay out all of those forward-looking plans so that we have a more clearly defined roadmap as to where we ultimately want to be, and then can start building towards that. So yes, I think that would be potentially possible in future fiscal years once we've put the overarching plan in place to evaluate that.
Okay, thank you. And then one other question. When do you expect to have the study of what our actual reserve should be, the risk analysis study being done? I expected that a lot, like many months ago, I think.
Chair Bustamante, Commissioner Hughes, in working with the Government Finance Officers Association, which is the contractor that is doing the work, I believe, and Yvonne can correct me if I'm wrong, our internal working goal was to have that before the board by the end of June. The thinking was that if it indicated that there were resources that weren't needed for true reserves as determined by the board, that would be one-time money that could then be available for allocation as part of the capital budget process, most likely. But that was our internal working target. Yvonne, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that is accurate, and I think we're on pace to meet that.
Okay, so the end of June, approximately. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions from the commission? Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you, Chair. On page 10, excuse me, at the bottom of the page, FY26 proposed operating budget, all these contingencies total $19 million. Can you just help me understand revenue replacement as the one that is, $4.3 million? is that something that might replace revenues that go into a general fund, or I think I'm confused by that term.
Thank you, Chair Bustamante, Commissioner Johnson. It's a catch-all category that could be utilized to replace any anticipated revenue that doesn't in fact materialize. The amount is calculated based upon the difference between the mean and low estimates in gross receipts tax and in property tax revenue. And so in simplest terms, the thought is that if property tax revenue, in fact, for fiscal year 26 comes in $2 million less than anticipated, that would be a resource that the board could tap in the first instance to cover that revenue that did not, in fact, materialize as was estimated. So we may be able to come up with a better term, but that's the concept, is that it's there in the event that revenue that is being estimated, does not, in fact, materialize. And that, again, could be due to a recession risk. It could be due to a funding cut from the federal government, but it's a catch-all. But the way we've calculated it is really looking at our primary tax revenue. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did. Thank you.
Commissioner Kokari-Stone?
Sure. Thank you for tremendous work for your whole team, and I'm looking at Yvonne as well. I have quite a few questions. I think it has to do with what we're looking at now with our current budget projections, revenues, impact of the gross domestic product, the economic analysis from the researcher from UNM. And one of the things I'm thinking about is our September-October budget, when we actually look at what we really have in hand. Could this be the year to expand our economic analysis besides what's been done in the past, to consider what other states and localities are looking at? And here's my line of thinking. Everything we have is around revenues, but is there a way to do some forecasting on the economic impact of the federal tariffs, budget cuts, freezes, because we're looking at the impact on not just what the economists mentioned in the quotes that you have in the middle of page, I believe it is, you have a quote that's highlighted from the economist around the GDP, prudent fiscal management, investment, workforce development, and strategic engagement in national policy discussions. Could we, and do we have money in our budget to expand the economic analysis to collaborate with think tanks like Brookings Institute? They have a sub-policy centers that can do some analysis, for example, to look at the impact of the downturn of the GDP, but the impact of freezes and tariffs and so forth on infrastructure. Infrastructure being going beyond our workforce, transportation, roads, energy, broadband projects, freezes on tariffs and the impact on development on housing, as we look at drywall and other materials coming from China and Mexico. Some of this was covered in the National NACO conference. I believe Commissioner Green was also at that meeting, where we looked at some pretty major significant impacts and consequences, including people pulling out of developments in Santa Fe County, and that will freeze us and demobilize us from having affordable housing development. The impacts of Medicaid cuts. We're looking at becoming a Medicaid provider, but we know it's a state-federal agreement. That would include impact on health and social services, the expanded needs we might have in the county as we look at some of our needs assessments with a growing aging population, but the growth in behavioral health. We know that during the economic downturns and recessions and research over the last 50 years, that behavioral health and mental health crises spike with communities. and finally, public safety. So there's a lot to consider beyond workforce, and this might be the year for us to lean into that prudent fiscal management with more evidence beyond what the economists at UNM can provide us. And I think there's national think tanks that could be partners with us, and we could be innovators and thinking through how to forecast, how to forecast and plan. So I'm just curious on your thoughts, and I know County Manager Schaefer, we've discussed this before as well.
Thank you, Chair Bustamante, Commissioner Chair Bustamante, Commissioner Kakari Stone. I do think that I believe that's going to be more on the expenditure side in terms of what our potential community and other needs might be depending upon certain unknown variables. And I don't disagree that that could be a worthwhile effort for us to undertake as we look at additional potential one-time resources that might be needed to meet that. Obviously, there's a lot of unknowns around what the administration's policies are, or what might ultimately be enacted. But I do think that that is more on the expenditure side of the equation and what the community needs are, as opposed to the revenue forecasting, which same unknowns, but are actually looking at what might these different policies means in terms of economic activity that results in revenue to the county. So to sum up, I don't know that it would really, as you said, be the remit of this economist, which is focused on macroeconomic and microeconomic conditions, so much as perhaps looking further on the expenditure side in terms of what those potential unknowns might be. So I think we're saying the same thing. It's just where we're focused on in terms of which side of the equation we're looking at.
Thank you, County Manager. And I think we could, I'd like to see us exploring as a county conversations with some of these think tanks on what the analysis they're already doing on potential impacts and consequences, and having maybe do a presentation coming up soon in July and August before we hit the September, October budget review as well. Thank you.
Anything else? Manager Schaefer, there is one area that we were on a trajectory as a part of resolution, or actually what birthed resolution 2024-001 with regard to public service and customer service. And the path we were on was with our strategic and operational planning director starting to work towards a bigger picture customer plan. Line 3 in the resolution calls for the data that shows high-performance organizations are more likely to have a 3-year strategic plan for customer service. And that was a conversation that I was having with the former strategic and operational planning director in hopes that we were going to have, or shall I say not in hopes, with the expectation that we were going to have some more strategic efforts for that front-facing element of all of our departments. So I'm happy to hear that we have an administrative person at the kiosk, but I think that the need, and I will work to see how we can make that happen, is to have someone who's really overseeing customer service, making sure that all the front-facing departments have a communication capability. There was a software that was brought to my attention by you and Assistant Manager Cordova, and if there is anything in here that says we're going to buy that, or we don't have the expertise to make that happen so that people can see where their permit is in the permitting process, any of those tools, but also having an overall county-wide conversation about what it really means to be responsive to those people who live in our communities. I will say it has absolutely improved, but we still get, I still receive feedback on, well, I called and no one ever called me back, or whatever the case may be. And I don't see that consideration in this particular discussion. Is there room for us to make that happen, or shall we wait until a resolution comes forth asking for a 3-year plan?
Chair Bustamante, Commissioners, I believe that with our new Director of Strategic Planning, Communications, and Data Analytics, that we'll be able to work to put that together within our existing resources or with, as needed, with the contractual resources that are included within Stephanie's budget to help move forward the county relative to those improvements. So I don't believe that that is a necessary budget-related item, as I believe we can move that forward. I hope that addresses your question.
It does. Thank you very much, Manager Schaefer. Okay, moving on with our meeting. Manager Schaefer?
Thank you, Chair Bustamante and Commissioners. I'm just going to recommend that perhaps we take a few minutes just to stretch and maybe use the facilities while the county manager's team sets up to answer specific questions relative to their specific budget. Won't take more than 5 minutes, and just recommend that we move back at 3:45 if that's okay with you.
Do we have a motion for a break? Do we need to motion, or do we just take a break? We're going to just take a break. We have a long I have been asked to sort of make sure that we thank whoever put these here, which is part of that time extension that we've just been asked to. So whoever put these here, thank you. Anyone out there who, we don't even know who did it? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We're just getting an update in our packet, so I apologize for that. And are we starting on page 14, Manager Schaefer? Or shall we just follow along as we have?
Thank you. I will share,
Okay.
Chair Bustamante and commissioners. We'll actually be starting on, I believe it is page 44, which is the county administration section of the county manager's office, to include commissioners as well as our intergovernmental summit. So that's where we'll be beginning relative to the county manager's office.
Okay, we are starting, we'll go ahead and start our meeting, and we will follow along with the county manager shared screen. As I understand it, it's somewhere near 44, but we'll know in 1 second. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Bustamante and commissioners. So, we're really trying to highlight relative to overall changes year over year. Focusing on the section of the county manager's budget relative to what we think of as the administration section, which includes liaisons. It includes our intergovernmental coordinator, our operations manager, our communications team, our strategic planning and data team all reside here. Relative to the bottom line, we are showing excuse me, bear with me. We are showing total increase in potential expenditures year over year of approximately $192,000 when you add it all up. Most of that is attributed to the full implementation relative to salary and benefits that the board adopted during fiscal year 25. Those amounts are now reflected in the operational budget of this section. The other driver of an increase in salary and wages and employee benefits is due to the addition of an administrative assistant, again, to help provide that forward-facing customer service at the kiosk at 240 Grant. This is where the position would reside. Obviously, that's a county-wide benefit and a particular benefit as well to the departments and elected offices that provide service out of our primary front-facing office at 240 Grant. In terms of particular highlights in the budget, now going back to the page, notwithstanding overall increase, we did try to reduce expenditures where we could while we continued to meet new needs and initiatives in this section. The budget as presented includes estimated cost to increase our Spanish language support, both for written communications as well as translation at public events. There is money included in the budget for an additional tribal spay and neuter clinic sometime in fiscal year 26. We are making arrangements to use current year budgeted resources for more of a animal welfare summit in July. So that's not reflected in this budget, as we think that we will be able to accomplish that using fiscal year 25 resources. And then finally, Civic Track software is included in our budgeted resources. We continue to try and ensure that we have the contractual resources and other resources in place to improve our overall operations. That includes fundings that are set aside under Ms. Stencil's budget relative to continuous improvement and the like, and that's a source of potential resources that can be utilized to help support broad brush strategic improvements, such as in the area of the customer service or at the individual department level. So to sum up, the budget is more or less flat relative to what was included in the previous fiscal year. Sarah Smith, our operations manager, is here to answer any particular questions about the overall admin budget, as is Stephanie Stencil from our strategic planning, data, and communications unit. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Manager Schaefer. Are there any questions? I have a question. And I just have to say that there can be it's a nuance, but it might have a negative tone if it's just tribal spay and neuter. Is that available to other communities? Is there a reason why we believe tribes need spay and neuter more than other parts of the county or other jurisdictions?
I'll let Chair Bustamante. It's really the location where the clinic is held as opposed to whose it's available to. Leandro Cordova, Deputy County Manager, was involved in helping coordinate that with, I believe the operator or the service provider was Res Dogs with Nambe Pueblo. But again, it's not exclusive to tribal members. It's simply the location where the event is held. And I believe that there are certain efficiencies in doing it that way. And again, defer to Commissioner Green and Deputy Manager Cordova relative to that. But it's not exclusive.
Thank you. Commissioner Green?
So just to answer your question there, one of the issues with spay and neuter clinics has been getting licensed veterinarians. Veterinarians must be licensed in the state of New Mexico to perform these clinics if they're off in non-tribal lands. But on tribal lands, you can bring in veterinarians from out of state, and their license and works on tribal land. So this was a workaround for some of the for the fact that some of the clinics couldn't find volunteers within New Mexico to do this. So they were bringing people in from Arizona, from Colorado, from Texas, from Oklahoma, and it's not exclusive to these out-of-state vets, but it allows them that opportunity. They happen on tribal land, but they are open to anybody, and the tribes have been willing to host them.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Bustamante, Commissioners. Next, we are presenting the budget relative to our newly created Office of Emergency Management. Again, year over year, the actual full budget to include fixed assets is less than flat. There was actually a decline in terms of resources requested. That is due to the fact that what had been set aside relative to potential third-party resources, Director Call, given impending hiring decisions and hopefully being fully staffed during the entirety of fiscal year 26, believes that those resources would not be necessary. That's in the services line. Separately, however, there was requested and included in the fixed asset summary, both in your original board book and the revised one that was just inserted into your book to include numbers, request for vehicles to support the operations of the Office of Emergency Management, and I believe that would allow us, and if I'm getting into details wrong, Director Call, just let me know, to return some loaner vehicles to the fire department. So with that, Director Call is here to answer any specific questions that you have relative to the Office of Emergency Management, as well as the proposed operating budget for fiscal year 26.
Do we have any questions for Director Hall?
Thank you, Chair.
Johnson?
Thank you, Director Call. I'm wondering if you all accounted for outreach and communications, because it seems like something that we do is we develop different plans, and, you know, this is a new office for the county. How do we tell the citizens of Santa Fe County about it? I'm wondering if that, I don't see it reflected in your budget. I wonder if that comes elsewhere, if it gets siphoned to another division. So that's, I'm just wondering about communication and outreach.
Thank you, Chair Bustamante and Commissioner Green. That's an excellent question. That is included in the FTE. We have an outreach coordinator specifically designated for that function, so that's included in the salaries in the FTE. He has been doing a great job reaching out to our community, getting signups for our Reverse 911 and our Alert Santa Fe. Has been spending a lot of time in the community making sure that outreach is accomplished and done. So that was not a separate line item, only encompassed in salaries.
Okay, thank you. So I guess I see it in the FTE, but I'm thinking about social media, print material, those kinds of things. It doesn't appear to be accounted for in this.
Yeah, we're also doing outreach that we've established a departmental newsletter that's going out quarterly. It's going to be put out. We're also working in close coordination with our County Public Information Officer, Olivia Romo, working closely with her and making sure that outreach is done, making sure that those public notifications are done and made through that, again, that FT individual.
Okay, thank you.
And I would just underscore, if I could, Chair Bustamante, Commissioner Johnson, that we do in fact support from the communications department within the county manager's office, both Office of Emergency Management, but all countywide, outreach. There are some funds allocated, in specific budgets as well, but I just wanted to underscore what Director Call said, which is he does receive that support as well from our communications team, and that budget is centralized within the CMO.
Thank you. Next question, Commissioner Kokari-Stone.
I just wanted to piggyback on Commissioner Johnson. It seems like I didn't see it in the budget, either with the your office, County Manager Schaefer, or this, but we're putting a lot on our communications team, and they're 2 people right now. And sometimes my concern is because they're so effective and efficient and creative, and they deliver a lot. Have you considered expanding to another FTE? Is that embedded in here somewhere for communications? And Director Call, we had discussed before as well the need for more community engagement, and I think that's what Commissioner Johnson was getting at, because the emergency management plan is so dense, and we need like boots on the ground and engaging in all 5 areas of our county. So those were just 2 things that struck me that there was a great need: communications and more boots on the ground with community engagement.
Even though that individual, thank you for the question, even though that individual is dedicated as an outreach coordinator, all the members of the department are going to be involved in that particular function and outreach. We've been involved in community wildfire protection days. That is one of the main things we're going to be doing. We're putting together evacuation zone plans. That's also an outreach function that we're going to be engaged in. And that is an ongoing effort for the whole department, headed up by that outreach and communications individual.
Chair Bustamante and Commissioner Kokari-Stone, So we have not brought forward an addition to the communications team in the county manager's office as part of this budget cycle. Certainly can evaluate that as we look forward into future fiscal years. I would just underscore that while we do have that centralized function, there are also other communication professionals that exist within the county and outreach coordinator type positions that our communication team centralized in the CMO works collaboratively with. Some that come to the top of my mind, include the position within the Office of Emergencies Management that is focused on public information as well as community coordination. There is also a position in the fire department that helps manage their social media as well as some of their other activities vis-a-vis public outreach. The sheriff's office has a public information officer as well that works in collaboration with our centralized team. Those are top of mind, but I do want to just make that point that the actual extent of the county's communication infrastructure, if you will, on the human resources front, does in fact extend beyond our internal folks, Olivia and Daniel, in the office of the county manager. But again, that's always something that we can reevaluate in future fiscal years as we, refine what their workloads are, as well as, the full integration of these other resources in other departments.
Thank you. I appreciate you reminding me of all those other experts. Thanks. I thought we were going to have to clone Olivia and Daniel.
Any further questions, Commissioner?
No, thanks.
I appreciate that question, and I actually have to follow up on what I also believe I understood the Commissioner to ask for. When I was the chair of the La Cienega Valley Association once upon a time, and before we had an emergency director, there were activities within the community that helped community understand where their evacuation routes would be. We actually ultimately got to a place where there was a drill, a scenario where people had to get out of the community. When I heard Commissioner Kakari Stone talk about what are we doing to get out there, and I understand and I'm grateful for the list of people who are also professionals, what does it take for us to get out and talk to community members about what their risks are, where they are, and going to their meetings? Because one thing that I'm hoping will also come out of whatever and we do our customer service is being where our community is and not expecting them to make sure to come to us when they have a question or we have something we need from them, instead of them waiting to find out, well, wait, how do we get out of this community if we don't have any egress on this one particular road and that's where the fire is, type of question. And that's why this particular community got very anxious after a fire actually was sustained on a road with no egress. That type of thing brought the county to our community, and the county was very active and involved with the community at that time. But my guess is there are other communities that would benefit from the, these are the risks in your neighborhood, and if that whatever were to do this, these would be the steps you'd take. Those are opportunities that we have with the list of experts and resources that we have, but we often get caught up in our day and don't reach out into the community more. We wait till something happens that they come to us. So that's essentially, if I may, I just know things that you get more buy-in from community, but I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But I appreciate you allowing me to say that further. Any other questions? Commissioner Hughes.
Yeah, if I could, Chair Bustamante, I appreciate that question very much. And, we do have 4 relatively large specific community outreach events in that vein. And as part of those efforts, we're also will be underscoring 2 individual representatives of, community organizations, HOAs, that our staff is available to meet with them in an individual group setting, which I believe is what you were referring to. And we'll make sure that we work with our growth management department team who has that master list of community organizations. Once we get through the next 4 regional events, that we're making that abundantly clear that we're more than willing to come to the community, so to speak, and those community organizations.
Thank you, Manager Schaefer. Commissioner Hughes.
Yeah, does the Office of Emergency Management have anything to do with Alert Santa Fe and giving alerts? Because, I don't know, I've noticed, like, whenever a city road inside the city is closed, they announce it right away. But in the county, not so much, and then it's particularly Interstate 25. Several times on my way home, I'm stuck in a trap, and it would certainly be helpful to broadcast that. And then it'd be good practice for when there's a more serious emergency.
Thank you, Commissioner Green. I appreciate that question. In that particular scenario you're referring to, the Sheriff's Department is responsible for requesting that through our RECC. But yes, the Office of Emergency Management does send out alerts through Alert Santa Fe. Our outreach coordinator, emergency management coordinator, outreach individual, does have that capability, as does the whole department, to be able to do that. We have had conversations with RECC to instruct us and to let us know when those type of closures happen. Generally, that is generated by the sheriff's office because they're on scene. They're the first responder and they see that incident to request that alert to be put out through RECC. So that's very good information, and we can definitely pass that on and keep that in mind in coordination with our RECC and our sheriff's department.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever received an emergency notice from the county at all. And it'd be nice to know what's going on. And like you said, you have to let the sheriff know, the RACC know, but somehow it has to be coordinated.
Thank you. We'll have that conversation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes. Thank you, Director. Any other questions? All right, moving on. Manager Schaefer?
Thank you, Chair Bustamante and commissioners. Relative to the Human Resources and Risk Management Division budget, it is relatively, flat year over year. The things that, I would highlight in terms of areas of potential augmentation in terms of where resources are going, and Director Park is here to answer any specific questions, is that we are continuing to ensure that we're investing in employee-related certification opportunities, specifically through our New Mexico Edge and Santa Fe County Community College training programs. As part of our ongoing efforts to ensure that we are investing in our workforce so that they can grow with us and meet our additional growth opportunities moving forward. Relative to the risk management budget, again, all budgets increased in the salary and benefits category, but in terms of other operational changes, there was a net decrease of approximately $338,000, and more specifically, we reevaluated the expenditures for security services at 240 grant, and believe that our needs can be met with one security personnel, albeit I believe at a higher level. So you can see on the proposed summary changes that there was that overall decrease in terms of resources requested. This budget does include a carry forward of the significant allocation of resources relative to our safety program initiative, and that's reflected in the amount that I'm highlighting. It was approximately $2.5 million that the board allocated specifically to ensure that we had the resources necessary to, one, really create a robust safety program countywide, but also be able to address the needs that came out of that safety program, whether that's in physical plant, in PPE purchases, or security upgrades to our various facilities, as we look at both the risk profile for our physical plant, as well as, most importantly, focusing on the risk that our employees face relative to their day-to-day work. I'd be pleased to let Director Park speak to that safety program and how the rollout is moving forward, but it was an area of particular emphasis by the board and by county management, and those funds will continue to be drawn down and spent as we move forward into fiscal year 26. Is there anything you want to add, Director Park?
I'd be happy to stand for any questions you might have.
Do we have any questions for our HR manager? I have a question. So there is a line item in all departments for training, travel, and per diem. The training, travel, and per diem in HR, is that specific to a particular, or just out of the manager's office, or is that an additional pocket, if you will, purse for any of the other departments to cover things like the NM Edge or specific trainings that would be sponsored by the manager's office?
I believe, thank you, Chair. I believe we have two different segments of that budget. One is to cover the county-wide things, such as Edge, and the other one is a small portion that covers the individual training for HR and risk employees within our department.
Understood, thank you. So is there a rubric that's used that says each employee would have this much money available for this type of training? That, you know, is there an allocation that's generally understood, recognizing that people may go to different trainings and there may be a difference, but is there something that cuts out the amount of money that would be spent for New Mexico Edge on each individual, for example?
Thank you, Chair. Right now, our Edge is based on our current usage and a projection of what we're seeing as interest. We have been very vocal in publicizing it. We have created a second cohort specific to Santa Fe County, so we are seeing an increase in trying to support our employees in terms of their professional development. So we didn't have a formula. We had an estimate of basically how we thought we would be able to utilize that, and also to account for the slight increase in tuition with New Mexico Edge.
Thank you, Director Park. Any other questions? Commissioner Green?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question about, I know in the past, a number of us up here have taken part in NACO. Is that incorporated into this? I tend to remember last year somebody asked me before budget season whether we were going to Tampa, and I haven't been asked whether any of us are going to Philadelphia or DC, whatever, but so.
Chair Bustamante, Commissioner Green, travel related to the Board of County Commissioners is actually budgeted as part of the commission related subdivision. And I believe, and Sarah can speak to this better than I can, that we have assumed that all commissioners will be traveling to the NACO conference. If Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding.
No, Chair Bustamante, Commissioner Green, that's correct. So we have budget set aside in FY25 for each of you for travel expenses, registration, So you're all set. It comes out of your budget,
And where is that? Where would that be found?
the commission budget.
So I'm highlighting the page right now, Chair Bustamante. So this is, again, at the overall CMO, meaning admin, commission, and intergovernmental level. And so that would be inclusive of the figure that I just highlighted on the page.
Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you for answering that.
Thank you, Commissioner Green. Thank you, Manager Schaefer. And thank you, Manager Park. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So when I look, I'm on page 54, and I'm looking at the table at the bottom half of the page. When I look at something like services, just looking at FY25 final budget, almost $3 million was budgeted in FY2025. The actuals is, much less than that. And then that's pulled over onto page 55 in services. I guess I just would love a sort of brief synopsis of what those expenses are sort of bulleted to, and what accounts for such a great difference in the budget and the actuals.
Chair Bustamante and Commissioner Johnson, in that particular line item, the board allocated resources to really move forward with the establishment of a safety program and a safety assessment at various facilities. And so ultimately, those resources will be utilized to address the needs that come out of that. That could potentially be addressing potential risk relative to the building infrastructure itself, as well as looking at potential changes that we need to make in our space at Public Works for hot welding, what have you. It was conceitedly a very rough estimate to make sure that the resources were there in order to address those safety issues, again, both with regard to our physical plant, again, and secondarily relative to our workplace safety. So when we put it together, the anticipation was that it would be spent out over multiple fiscal years. And so that's why that number was where it was in terms of, looking at the increase in budget between fiscal years and why it's carrying forward. So let me know if that didn't answer your question, but
No,
that's the lion's share of that line item.
Okay, thank you, Manager Schaefer. And one, I think it's a request. I don't think I would like to request, and I hate to ask for someone to do a little bit more work. It would be really helpful for me if we could have org charts from each division, and that goes forward. I sort of just took a sneak peek at future, just so that I could actually kind of visualize the number of FTEs that are baked into the salary line, because it would just be helpful to understand how many folks are in Director Calls Department, Director Parks, so it would be really helpful for me going forward. I don't know about the rest of the commission.
Absolutely, we'll provide you that information.
Okay, thank you.
In the budget book, for easy reference.
Yes, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson, Manager Schaefer, Commissioner Kakari-Stone.
Thank you, Chair Bustamante. This is just a question for our Director of HR. I don't see it in the line item of the budget, but do we have HR resources internally for ombudsman, conflict resolution, employee to employee, employee to supervisor, communications, relations?
Thank you, Commissioner Bustamante, Chair Bustamante, and Commissioner Kakari-Stone. We do have some in contract services that we have available. We also provide a great deal of training for our employees, and we have a dedicated HR professional who works with our supervisors and a lot of times with conflict resolution. We're working to build in the performance improvement plans for those who have less than standard performance to help try to coach them through that, and that involves a lot of communication and training. So we have quite a few mechanisms to support and facilitate communication between employees, supervisors, and departments and divisions.
Thank you. And is that in the training and also in services line item here embedded there, or?
It is some of our contractual services that we do have available, and it is also then through our staff.
Okay, thank you. And are all employee wellness programs, including seeking assessment for substance abuse, is that all handled through external insurance companies and programs, so we don't do anything in-house?
Thank you for that question. We have a couple of different types of wellness programs. We have employee assistance program, which is the outside contractual services that provides the mental health and support services for counseling. And then we have employee wellness programs such as fitness challenges and Noom and some of those other support services that we also provide. So they are still provided through us by an outside provider.
Okay,
Service
I
professional.
just want to, thank you so much. That's good news. I just want to be clear, that's under the services line item? Is that correct in the budget on page 54?
Yes, ma'am, that is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Thank you, Commissioner Kokari Stone and Manager Park. Any other questions? Okay, we can proceed. Thank you. Manager Schaefer.
Thank you, Chair Bustamante and commissioners. For reasons that we discussed when we did our overall summary, as you can see, the Finance Division budget is in fact purposely overstated because that is where we budget the contingencies that we talked about. So again, those are only expended if and as needed. And so we don't reasonably anticipate that the Finance Division is again going to be expending in excess of $30 million. But that is in fact where our budget contingencies reside. In addition, that is where we budget for those initiatives that cut across county departments in terms of compensation packages, as well as increases to para contributions, as well as insurance cost increases. They ultimately reside initially in the Finance Division and then are moved into other departments' budgets as and if necessary relative to those initiatives. In other words, if money is necessary to fund an increase in compensation during the course of the fiscal year, that money would be moved from the Finance Division to those other departments. And again, these are where budget contingencies are also housed, and that explains why the estimated budget is so high and the actual expenses historically are so low. Relative to other items, one of the main drivers in terms of the Finance Division budget is to include within its budget the resources that are necessary for the implementation of the county's enterprise resource planning and jail management system. So again, those amounts, which are in excess of $7 million, are included with the Finance Division's budget as well. I think outside of those items and budgeted salary increases, the Budget Division's budget was relatively flat, but I'll turn it over to our Finance Division Director, Ms. Herrera, to answer or augment anything that I had to say and answer any questions that you might have relative to the Finance Division budget. And relative to the ERP and jail management system, Deputy County Manager Elias Bernardino is leading those efforts, and so he would be prepared to answer questions relative to the status and timeline relative to those transformative IT projects.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, before I move on to the finance budget, as Manager Safer mentioned, we'll give you the information on the FTE, but just for your information today, the CMO has 10 FTE within its division. The BCC, which includes the liaisons, there are 10 individuals. OEM has 4 FTE. HR has 17. Finance has 35. IT has 24, and legal has 10. As far as the finance budget, as Manager Schaefer mentioned, it is slightly inflated because of the reserves. So I went and pulled some information, some detailed information to give the board. The final budget for fiscal year 25 was 5.4 million, and the proposed budget for 26 is 5.2, so a reduction of just under $200,000 or negative 4%. Besides salary and benefits with those 35 people, the other large component of finances budget relates to services. The services involve ensuring that we have an annual audit, financial audit. We contract with a contractor for internal audit services. We have various contractors who help us with our bond compliance, from arbitrage calculations to reporting to fiscal agent services, as well as to our financial advisor and our bond legal attorney. We also, in this fiscal year 26, we requested some funds for a one-time ask regarding project management services for implementation of potentially a new merchant service vendor. An RFP, I think we mentioned a little bit ago that an RFP went out for merchant services, and so they are now evaluating those proposals and determining who the winning proposal will be. And with that, Madam Chair, Commissioners, I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Yvonne. Do we have any questions? Commissioner Green.
Thank you. Throwing contingencies, I mean, they have to go somewhere, so I get that, but putting them into a bucket at such an extraordinary amount compared to the rest of your budget sort of throws that off, and I wish that could sort of be pulled out for clarity's sake, so you can compare apples to apples one year to the next. Also, the ERP seems to be, and maybe I'm just combining these things, conflating them slightly, but the ERP seems to be, a one-time, or maybe it carries over for 2 years, but it's essentially a one-time expense. And maybe there's subscriptions that are ongoing, but the implementation sort of has a little heavier lift. And so sort of seeing those big macro projects over multiple years, if they extend over multiple years, implementation versus subscription services and so on as a package would be useful just to understand and to see it broken out as an individual item, and to see how it stretches over multiple years, because these things do take years. And so also in support of all of those. The contingencies, though, to me is something that should just be, that bar chart scares me. And then I guess with the bar chart in fiscal year 2023, which I wasn't a part of, how did we suddenly decide to start budgeting so much more in contingency? Was that essentially a change in management? And is that a Catherine Miller style of contingency versus a Greg Schaefer style of contingency, or?
Chair Bustamante, Commissioner Green, no, I believe that's a classification issue. We used a new software this year called ClearGov, and when we originally implemented it, we put data in back from 2019 to current, which I think was 2023. as we were working with the contractor to classify the lines to the appropriate categories, the county has made several reorganizations, and at the time, I think our perception of what the reserves were classified are different than now, and we tried to get those. We did try to work with our vendor to try to get those reserves out so that you could see those separate from the finance budget, but we weren't able to get it done in time to be able to show the two different buckets. So I believe this is just really a classification within that software. So once we're able to finish and correct everything, we'll be able to show the commission the reserve bucket separately and then truly the finance budget, which should be more in line with what we see in fiscal year 23.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions for Director Adetta? If there are no further questions, let's proceed. Manager Schaefer.
Thank you, Chair Bustamante and commissioners. Really will highlight relative to information technology overall. Here are some of their proposed operating budget highlights in terms of some of where their larger larger operational costs are expended, and I'll allow our IT director, Daniel Sanchez, to address those in earnest. When we look at the overall bottom line, I believe that the increase relative to the IT budget is at approximately $145,000, which again includes some increases, as you've seen across the board, in salary, in wages, and I'll let Daniel highlight for himself those areas of particular focus for the IT division as we look forward in terms of fiscal year 2026, as well as some of the larger items on its fixed asset request. Go ahead, Daniel.
Hey, Manager Schaefer, Commissioners. As Manager Schaefer expressed, we have some increases across our operational expenses, mainly due to we support the whole county, so we have funding for large licenses such as Microsoft Enterprise, right? So that's a very large component of it. We also have maintenance and support for all the equipment across the county. We do cascades throughout the county with PCs, laptops. As we've talked about before, we're moving towards more of a mobile workforce. So as we cascade devices out, we're trying to give employees laptops to be able to function wherever they are within the four walls or outside the four walls. So a lot of those are where those costs come from. Also, as we're moving more towards technology, obviously costs continue to rise, right? We add more resources, more infrastructure, licenses, and support maintenance to come for those as well. So with that, I would stand for any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
So,
Commissioner Green.
So ERP sort of seems like an IT sort of thing, but maybe it's not residing in your space. So just to make sure, it seems like it's an IT tool, but maybe it's only a finance tool, but.
Chair Bustamante, Commissioner Green, I'm going to ask Elias Bernardino to explain the executive management team and executive steering committee that is working intimately on the ERP project. As he'll explain, it does bring together representatives from a diverse cross-section of the county, and as we get further along in the actual process, it will include even more representatives. So IT has a very big seat at the table, but I'll let Elias unpack that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Green, the ERP is, as you're aware, a very holistic system that touches every department, every division within the county, and having a team that oversees the project in general. It's comprised of the IT director, HR director, finance director, the assessor's office, the treasurer's office, myself, Leandro, I'm missing one, Stephanie, our director of innovation. Thank you. And we meet every 3 weeks and we go over the project. And right now we're just getting status reports of the current state and the future state. The reason we did it in that way is so that way the project is not depending on one individual, and it's depending on various individuals and getting input from every angle as much as possible. That's the way we designed it, so that way we have a continuum of support for the project.
Thank you. I understand that, and I think that's a great strategy to roll it out and to understand that it touches everybody, right? It's an ERP system, it's enterprise level. But just like Microsoft 365 resides in IT, an ERP system, is a tool, just like all these software programs. And that seems like it would be an IT product and something that would reside in there. So I'm just sort of questioning why it isn't in an IT sort of thing and just in a finance sort of place or wherever it actually resides. I would expect it in future years to show up in the IT budget, and the subscriptions and the things like that would be a software product, information technology, similar to the title of the department. That's where it would reside. Now, I get it, it touches everywhere, just like IT touches everyone in the county, and finance and everything at the county manager's level probably touches everywhere in the county. But this seems as an information technology, an ERP system is an information technology. It would reside there. Just wondering, was there some logic as to why it lived somewhere else? But that's fine. I just had a question.
Commissioner Green, to react to that, for example, we have the utilities department has their own system, and it's my understanding the subscription is coming out of the utilities department and doesn't come from the IT department. Okay. The CAD system from RECC, the budget does not reside in IT's budget, it resides in RECC. So there are various components that, depending on the nature of their work, that budget may reside due to their budget constraints or their budget philosophy. In terms of the ERP holistically, that's part of the conversations we'll be having down the road. Right now, it's piecemealed in various departments. And so I'm sure we'll give a suggestion to the county manager on how we would budget that down the road after this project is concluded.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Green. Thank you, Manager Bernardino. We have Commissioner Kakari-Stone.
Yes, this is for Director Sanchez. Since I'm looking at the training and travel, and there seems to be quite a cut, and it wasn't even a very robust budget in the previous years, but why is it so low? If you can explain to me, when we have so many quick moving and emerging technologies, it seems like we would be beefing up our training and travel with our IT team.
Thank you, Commissioner or Chairperson Malde, Commissioner Kakari-Stone. We've structured it so that every team member has opportunity to train. Because of the projects we have, because of the nature of what we do and the timelines we have, we found that unfortunately a lot of time is allotted to training, not by choice, but by the nature of what we do. We support the whole county. So we've structured it so that each sub-session of IT has the opportunity to train, and they come and share that training back with their coworkers. So for example, if somebody goes to Microsoft 365 training, they go and they oftentimes get a subscription to share that or collaborate with their coworkers.
So I believe what I understand Director Sanchez to be explaining is that his department tries to use a train-the-trainer model where they're utilizing individuals that avail themselves of training opportunities, either remote or in person, and then come back and train the rest of their colleagues. If I misspoke, that
No, thank you, Manager Schaefer. Yeah, and also there's a lot of things that are online now, right? You can Google it. We have a lot of free training with our software. So, like example, like if you're using Microsoft 365, there's a lot of built-in training with that. As we incorporated that into the pilot and the rollout, we had some internal trainings, and then we provide trainings to additional staff throughout the county. So there's a lot of things that are online now as well, available to get that knowledge. And then I lean on vendors. So we have a vendor who supports product X or hardware X. As they do those things, my expectation is that they're also showing and training my staff how to do those items as well and help troubleshoot.
Thank you, Commissioner Kakari Stone, Director Sanchez, and Manager Schaefer. Any other questions? We can proceed, Manager Schaefer.
Thank you, Chair Bustamante and commissioners. The last component unit of the county manager's office that we have on slate to talk about today is our legal division or county attorney's office. And you'll see relative to the legal department's budget some increased cost associated with our ongoing build out relative to our records management program. Records management, as distinct from IPRA, is also housed within the county attorney's office. And looking forward to fiscal year 26, one of the requested items and some carryover funds associated with that function within the county's attorney's office is to continue with our digital scanning project so as to reduce the number of physical records that the county has to maintain, but also the recommended budget includes resources to obtain an enterprise content manager, which is separate and apart from the ERP system, but is complementary to. The total of those efforts is to, again, centralize more in-house through digital means our ability to manage our records. And then separately, the budget request includes a recommended FTE position, records clerk, to help assist with the growing volume of records request that the county processes pursuant to the Inspection of Public Records Act. With support from attorneys, the numerous requests that we receive are largely managed within the county attorney's office, except for those that are dealt with directly by individual elected officials are managed by that one resource, which puts a lot of strain on our records manager, Francine. And so this is intended to both be the IPRA clerk, a relief factor, as well as just provide some redundancy so that if we did suffer a loss in human resources, we'd have someone else who would be able to hopefully be trained up over time to help discharge that function. And then finally, the legal department is anticipating an increase in the contract rates associated with our outside counsel who support and supplement the services provided in-house. So with that, by way of my general overview, I'm going to turn it over to County Attorney Walker Boyd to address the specific increases and changes in the County Attorney's Office budget year over year, separate and apart from scheduled salary and benefit increases. Thank you, Walker.
Thank you, Manager Schaefer, Chair Bustamante, and Commissioners. I have some data here on IPRA requests to report to you all. In 2021, the County Attorney's Office processed 893 requests to inspect public records. In 2022, we saw an increase to 963. In 2023, 1,164, and that is what triggered this FTE request. We made this actually in a previous budget year. And then in 2024, we had approximately the same number, 1,120 requests. And year to date, I'm told we've received about 463 requests. Doesn't sound like an about number. That probably is the number. And so we're slightly ahead of, I guess, the trend line here. And so I do expect to see another slight increase. And so that I won't speak any further to Manager Schaefer's explanation of the reason for the FTE, but our current employee, we have one employee who is responsible for coordinating the county's responses to records requests, reviewing documents for exemptions, and producing records. And we're automating that process. There are efficiencies to be gained there, but unfortunately, it is basically just a human resource issue that needs to be alleviated with this FTE. I'd also note that Francine also assists in responding to discovery requests that the county receives in litigation. So when the county is the subject of a lawsuit, it can receive requests to produce records. We work with outside counsel to prepare our actual responses, but we need someone to go and collect the documents, put them in one place, and get them produced. So that's another part of the job that isn't accounted for in the number of IPRA requests we've received that I just reported to you all. Finally, I would just note that vis-a-vis the outside counsel contracts, those contracts are on a 4-year time frame. So the reason for the increase that you're seeing this year in our contracts budget is these contracts are expiring. We're actually in the middle of a procurement right now. We've issued a request for proposals. Those will be evaluated, and we'll at some point award outside contracts to outside counsel. But as I've noted, the rates were locked in 4 years ago, and since then there have been substantial increases in the cost of attorney's fees. So I do expect that any contracts we will enter into will reflect a higher hourly rate for outside counsel. So I'm available to answer any other questions you might have.
Thank you, Attorney Boyd. Thank you, Manager Schaefer. Do we have any questions? Thank you, Commissioner Green.
Just for clarity's sake, what types of outside counsel contracts? I can imagine John Upton for water. What other things are out there?
So we have work on tax issues. There might be tax issues with fringe benefits analysis that's required. We have outside counsel who are serving as who serve as hearing officers. For example, you saw an attorney on outside counsel contract, John Zingler, who was the hearing officer for a nuisance proceeding that you acted on at a previous meeting. There are, I'd have to ask my deputy to come in and tell you each and everything, but there are specialized areas that, I guess I'd break it down this way. We have insurance counsel, insurance coverage who defend us. That's not reflected in this number, but those insurance defense attorneys are going to be defending the county typically against tort liability. But everything else that comes in that might require some specialized expertise, whether it's a tax issue, whether it's a water issue. I think that Mr. Utton is probably the largest in terms of the volume of work, but there are a number of other issues. Condemnation is another example. So the Pewaukee Basin Regional Water System, we have condemnation proceedings that are initiated to obtain property easements over property. That work is being handled by outside counsel.
And those, so I guess there's a theory or a strategy to keep them all in one place, but there could be that the outside counsel for the nuisance ordinance could be in growth management and in the enforcement, sort of in that process, so that we would see and reflect, oh, we adopted this this ordinance that now allowed us to lean and clean or clean and lean, and that's why we have an increase in growth management, because we now needed a hearing officer who's a lawyer. And the same thing for the water for John Utton. It seems like that would be a, yes, it could be all under legal, but it also could be under the utilities division, so that it would be, you'd show mission creep, as it may be, in those specific areas where their function is. And then that was sort of the reason why I asked the question, like what sorts of people are in that? Because in the core legal functions here, it seems like those are not core. Those are additional services that are specific to areas of other operations in the county. So thank you for clarifying that.
Chair and Commissioner Green, that's a good point, but that also mirrors the layout of the county attorney's office itself. We have attorneys within our office who are detailed to work with specific departments, and ultimately there's a need to have one of my goals is to bring more work in-house and have the attorneys who are on staff handling more and more, just I think to give a better opportunity to handle more meatier legal work and make the county an attractive place to work as a lawyer, but more attractive. And so that's one thing to bear in mind. But the other thing to bear in mind is that the county needs to have a single legal strategy and single approach to the law issues, and those issues can touch many different departments. And so it's hard to, on the one hand say, yeah, it is just attributable to this one division, but that might be something, a specific legal task might be directed from the board level to the manager level to within our own office. So it's very hard to make that division very clean. But I certainly appreciate the comment and agree with the descriptive nature here. They're saying it is outside of the office. We're not doing it all ourselves.
And there could be some sort of resource tracking to sort of allow us to see in the legal world, there's general, board meeting review of ordinances and resolutions and sort of that rote stuff. And then how many hours, that budget that was used by growth management and a budget that was used by water and a budget that was used by utilities and so on. So we could track that. Might be more useful for you than it is for us, but it would be also useful for us.
I will look into that. Thank you. Thank you, Chair and Commissioner Green.
Thank you, Commissioner, Attorney Boyd and Manager Schaefer. Other questions? Commissioner Hughes?
Yeah, I just have a question about under services. You, in 23, 24, 25, you haven't spent over 200,000 barely, or 233,000, and yet you allocated 925,000 for 26. I just wondered why there was such an increase over actual.
So, Chair and Commissioner Hughes, the increase is primarily going to be explained by the request for enterprise records management software. I mean, stepping back, the services line is going to encompass both the outside counsel work that we've just been discussing, and it's also going to include the records management, any and all services. I'll note that another part of our budget includes publishing ordinances in the news, and obtaining legal research software subscriptions. So there's a lot of things. It's not just outside counsel that's within that item. Now, stepping back, part of the reason for the unencumbered balance is that it's hard to predict particularly accurately how much legal services the county is going to require in a given year. It could go up, it could go down, and so that's unfortunately what I would explain as part of the previous year's unencumbered balances you see in that item. The increase is going to be largely, if not entirely, attributable to the request for enterprise records management software, both implementation and then an ongoing subscription for that software in future fiscal years. And so, I could. It's hard to, that would be the two explanations for the large unencumbered balance, both looking backward and then the increase you're seeing. It's not because we're anticipating or building in more contingencies into this budget beyond the one that Manager Schaefer mentioned about the expected increase in attorney services. And certainly if that doesn't pan out, or if the county doesn't need as much legal work as it has in past years, then we would need to look at reducing that line item to reduce the overall unencumbered, the unexpended balance you see in the year.
But most of the increase is due to what? Records management? Some sort of, what do you call it?
Chair and Commissioner Hughes, enterprise,
Enterprise,
it's a bit of a mouthful for me, and I wish our records manager was here to give you the full mouthful. It is the
well, this is the first year we're using it?
so as Manager Schaefer mentioned, Chair and Commissioner Hughes, the county currently has no centralized system for
Right.
managing its records. Different offices within the county, both within the county manager's office and also across the county, have their own ways of keeping electronic records and physical records. So the project that our record staff are embarking upon now is both digitizing existing physical records to make them more readily accessible and available for the county's own business purposes and in response to public records. But then also, we don't have a system for finding those records. So right now, if you wanted to find a record, whether it's because you need it yourself or whether it's because a member of the public is requesting it, we don't have a single system that you can go to that says, let's find the permit file within land use for this permit. Let's find the sheriff's office file for this incident number, that kind of thing. And so the request for this software is for, to procure software that is going to allow us to do that. So if someone is, essentially instead of having to go to the clerk's office to find clerk's office records, we can query the software and produce those records, whether it's for internal business purposes or in response to a public records request. Under the status quo, without this system, we're essentially going to different parts of the county and saying, can you please find these records? Okay, go look for them. Okay, thank you for finding them for us, give them back to us. We'll then use them as we need to, whether it's for our own purposes or for the public to inspect.
Okay, thanks for that explanation. I figured there was something there.
So and I apologize for getting around to the detailed explanation you probably deserved at the front end, Chair and Commissioner Hughes. It is a substantial upfront expenditure. It's going to be $200,000 we expect, and then lower over time with it being a subscription. But that is the reason for the large increase.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner Hughes and Attorney Boyd. And any additional questions? Manager Schaefer, we can proceed.
That gets us as far as we hoped to go today, Chair Bustamante and Commissioners. We will be providing the requested FTE count and organizational charts for each of the departments tomorrow. We'll also be compiling, as requested, a one-page summary sheet that shows everything that's reported on the individual fund level, so that you can look at it again holistically at one page. I appreciate that request for additional summary information. If there is anything else that you would like us to compile or prepare, as we move forward through this process, please just let myself and Director Herrera know. But I think that takes us to the end of where we hope to get today.
Thank you, Manager Schaefer. Do we have any closing comments or a motion to adjourn?
I will move to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn by Commissioner Green, a second by Commissioner Hughes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ça suffit. We're done. Thank you.